behind the table. I've got the camera way over there this morning. Happy Monday to you, friends. Are you excited? Are you through the halfway point? Are you ready to get on with the next step of the quilt along? I'll be honest with you, I was working on my week 2 homework just this morning. I started it last night, but then we went and had a little ice cream break. And when I came back from the ice cream treat, I didn't want to sew anymore, but I got it done this morning. I've got my quilt top all ready to go. Are you ready for step 3? Let's wait a couple seconds. Yay! Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Tiger Lily's mom. Thanks so much for coming. Let me go ahead. I've got my iPad over here so I can talk with you guys. So, as I alluded to this morning, if you saw my Instagram story, I was prepping the table for this morning's quilt along. Let's just review what week 3 says. Week 3 is we're going to prepare the backing. Okay, that's easy. Assemble the sandwich, also easy, and then start the top quilting. Easy, but these are, when you add 3 easy things together, it's a little overwhelming, but that's okay. We're gonna get through it step by step. And I almost called my mom last night to see if she wanted to come be my video assistant, but I didn't. Maybe next week. I'll see if she wants to come to the finale and A, say hello to you, and B, be a little video, because we are going to kind of, because we're doing 3 different things and trying to manipulate the videos. Again, there's one camera, it's way over there. So the good news is my island's on wheels. So we're going to I'll just move the screen and we'll go to the next step. So hopefully that's gonna work. I know, I almost did, Mama, to see if you wanted to come. But we're gonna see if my just moving the screens during the live works. If not, we're just learning together. Again, I'm always here for questions. So hopefully week 2, I know I've seen a couple people that are tagging me on Instagram that are getting their stuff done. Sarah and Amanda, they're getting their quilt blocks put together slow and steady. Again, not a race, but these runners are looking so fantastic. And I love everybody's fabric choices. So fun. Oh, I know, Sarah. See, Mama Sarah wants to meet you. She needs to come. Okay, so I did want to show you. So I just talked about this last time. What I was going to make, remember, because we ended up with 10 extra little half squares. So this is the pinwheel block I was talking about making. You just put it on a thing. So if you wanted to with some of your scraps, you'll make 2 of these. You need 4. You have 10. So you could either make a couple of them and make a bag, you know, with 4 of them together. Super cute. That would be a 12-inch block bag. So you just would have to make a couple extra, but you have plenty of fabric. But this is the cute little pinwheel I wanted to just show you that real quick. Good morning. Oh my goodness, snowy Utah. We didn't get any snow this year. It was a bummer. But I'm okay with it. You know, maybe next year. So let's move on. Good morning from Hershey, a newbie. Oh, so I'm just going to watch right now. We're going to slow and steady. It's going to be great. But again, ask any questions. That's why I'm doing this as a live. So that way it's kind of like an interactive. I can answer your questions. I wish we could all be together in a quilting studio and I could walk and sit next to you and work it with you. But this is as close as we can get. Thank you, Internet, for helping us work together. So as you recall, last week, we went ahead and we were putting the blocks together. Now, I will be honest, I did go ahead and do the next step that I told you we were going to do this week, only because I couldn't figure out how I was going to do this and all the other things in this live video. So I will tell you what I did. I will walk you through this step, but I can't do it with you. What step am I talking about? Now, if you have your quilt top ready, you will see your points are going to go right to the edge. You will see that I have added, let's see if I can get a little closer so you can see. Got a little camera. Okay, so see right here? So your blocks end right here. You go right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to add this little strip. Now, if you remember during the cutting video, we cut a bunch of these 1.5-inch strips, right, of your neutral color. And so what you're going to do is you're going to sew, I think there were 5 of them. I don't have my fabric. It does plenty. This is the extra I have left. So all you're going to do, you will see right here, here is where I did it. You're just going to sew them together 1/4-inch seam right here. And I didn't press this one open yet with my handy dandy seam roller, but that's all you're going to do. So you're going to take your 4 or 5 with the fabric strips that are 1.5 inches wide, and then with the fabric, that means the length, right? And you're going to sew them and make one super long piece. Okay, so when you're sewing them as a quilt block, you can sew them like this. Now I am going to show you something while I'm standing here on this side of it. You also have to sew, and this I did not do. We're going to do this next week, putting the binding on the runner, right? But this week you need to prep your binding. So I'm going to show you how to do that, just so it's ready to go for next week. So remember, here's all your binding strips. So the one that you're going to put on the outside of the runner, you have like this. It's just a little skinnier, but this is the binding strips. So I brought this over to show you. Now remember, when you're sewing it and you're going to just sew quilt blocks, straight line, right sides together, perfect. When you're sewing binding, there's a different way to do it. And I am going to show it to you on the machine. We're going to whirl around, hopefully, and I can show it to you. But I just want to show it to you up close and personal right here, because rather than sewing them right sides together, right, and just a straight line here, you don't want the bulk of the binding all in one spot. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it on a 90-degree, okay? And this way we're going to sew still right sides together. I'm just showing you the angle right now. You're going to sew that at an angle right here, the 90 degrees. So that way we're going to evenly distribute the weight of that seam on the binding so it's not so bulky in one area. I'll get to it a little bit later, but I wanted to show it while I was up close and personal, and y'all are looking all super close, but that's okay. All right, so the next thing we need to do, so you need to have, before we're going to put the sandwich together, you're going to want to put those strips along each side. Now, what I did, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You could do the long sides first. You could do the short sides first. That really doesn't make a difference because you're making one long strip and you just, so I sewed this one side all the way down, and then I sewed this long side all the way down, brought it over to my ironing board, which is why we didn't do this together today. And then I had to iron those seams open, right? Both the long sides, iron them open. Now, once they're open, I'm gonna go ahead and put on the short side and put on the second short side. Hello, all my friends from Indiana and Massachusetts. Hello, Ann. Hello, Libby. Hello, Karen. Hello, friends. All right, so we have, once you've got the edge done, and this is, I talked about this before, but the reason we're putting this little strip on the sides is that when we add our binding's not going to cover the points. If we just went ahead and didn't add the strip and just made this the runner as is, these points could get covered by your binding. You'd have to be really finagly to do your 1/4-inch seam on the binding to make sure that your points are good. It's much easier to get these pretty points if you're doing it with this strip. And I think it just makes it a little bit wider. It's a nice width of a table runner. So remember, this was a 12-inch block. We added the 1.5 inch. So it's about a 14.5 inches wide. Depending on how you do your binding, you might get a little smidgen extra either way, but it's a nice width for a table runner. Okay, so the first thing you have to do, we're going to do a couple in different stages. So another thing that I did, so you sew them all into one long strip, yes, and then trim the part and start over, right? This isn't like sewing. Sew them all into one long strip. So one side and then trim that part off and start over. You just make one long strip. It's like binding, but For this one, you just sew one long strip, and then you do the other strip and one long strip. Now, I mean, you don't have to have them all. You just have to have it long enough for your length and your width, right? So depending on, it doesn't have to be, because you're going to cut it into 4 sections while you're doing it. So I just sewed it into one long strip just because it was easier just to manage. I sewed one side, cut it. Sewed one side, cut it, ironed, and then sewed the 2 short sides, cut. And that was it. I could have given you measurements, but that's not hard. The binding, you never cut. It's just one continuous all around. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, let me know. Okay, yay, perfect. All right, so the next we have to do is prep the backing. Now, again, another thing where TV Magic, you're welcome, Miss Sarah, is here with us. So remember, our backing fabric, we needed 1 yard. So 1 yard of backing fabric. Now, backing you can piece. I've talked about that before. I could have thrown my pinwheel in here. I could have used a bunch of my scraps for my fabric or for my fat quarters and made one long thing. You can do whatever you want, but for the ease of today's project, this is just a 1 yard cut. So it's of 36 inches, 1 yard, by width of fabric, which was 42, 44, 40, whatever. Somewhere in that, depends on your salvage. But anyway, so what you're going to do is you're going to lay it on your cutting table, and you're going to cut right down the middle. So you're going to have an 18-inch by width of fabric and another 18-inch by width of fabric. Okay? So you're going to have 2 pieces. This is 18 inches wide. And all I did, again, before the show, is seamed them together. So you can see right here, I took a nice generous seam because this is where the salvages are. And like I mentioned, you want to take, whether your salvage is this white piece, you can cut that off if you want to. I never do. It gets trimmed off during the project. And then the other side of the salvage, the print goes all the way to the edge, but you'll be able to see, usually you see 2 rows of, looks like needle marks, and you don't want that on your quilt. So it's a nice healthy 1-inch seam, or you can trim it and give yourself a 1/4-inch seam. But all I did was sew those together. So now I have my 2 18 inches sewn together, and I used my little seam roller and folded that over, pressed it on both sides, and it's perfect. So that is, you're going to make your quilt back. Okay, but you're going to put that to the side because we're not going to do that part yet. Because I did leave some things to show you during the live. That's the whole point of the live, right? To show you how to do things and work with you, hopefully. So, as I mentioned, also in the materials, you needed batting. My favorite go-to has been for years is Warm and Natural. You can get it at your big box store. You can get way too much of it online. But big box store, this is perfect. Warm and Natural, or they have Warm and White. But I like Warm and Natural. I buy it by the bolt. But you needed a certain piece. You needed about, 15, 16 inches wide. 16 and a half inches wide. I have extra. And then the width, the length of your runner. So I'm a big scrap user. Like I said, because I make quilts and all the things. So this was just something I pulled out of my scrap bucket. English. It was plenty big enough. But I do want to show you what you do to trim it first. So the one thing so we're making our quilt sandwich. It's kind of like an Oreo cookie where you're going to have the quilt top on the top. The batting is the middle, that yummy good stuff. And then the quilt back, the back of the quilt runner is on the bottom. So that's our 3-layer sandwich. And this is how you do it. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you have given your quilt top a good press. Now, during the quilt block assembly, I was using that wooden seam roller like it was my job. It is my best friend when I'm assembling blocks because I can do it over on my sewing table. I'm not getting up and going back and getting up and going back to my iron. It presses those seams. You can see they're all pressed open, beautiful. That's exactly what we want, remember, because the bulk of these corners is 8 fabrics coming together in one corner in that seam, and you just want to help minimize that bulk by having everything pressed open. So once you've got your top assembled, done the edges, give it a good press with your iron. I love steam. You don't have to have steam. You just want to make sure that it's nice and straight, wrinkle free, because anything, any kind of bits and blops and bubbles could get caught up in your quilting right now. So this is the time where you go to do a nice press. I've even been known to use a little starch. Doesn't hurt because I'm going to wash it after the fact. It's going to wash right out. But just to make sure, if I've got one of those stubborn seams that won't pop out and the steaming working, you know, maybe do a little spray water or a little spray of water with some irons. Do that just to help get that seam out, that wrinkle, I should say. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put your quilt top on right down on your batting. Now, take into consideration, I know I'm like 3 miles away from the camera and it looks like a blurry blob, but I'm just gonna go on the fact that you can see, maybe. Pause it and zoom in if you can't. Not during the live, when you come back. But you can see right here. So I'm laying it down and I'm giving myself a minimum of a 1/2 inch overlay. I actually have 1 inch, it looks like, because I know that I'm 18 inches wide. So you want your top to be, what we say, it was about 15, give or take. And then we want this to be 16, 16 and a half, 17, because we want this to be bigger. We want each layer to be so we can see it on the edge. When we're quilting on the top, we want to be able to see all 3 layers. So the top one is skinnier, the middle one gets a little wider, and the back one gets a little wider. Hopefully that makes sense. So this is what I'm going to do. Because I'm using scrap pieces, I'm going to just lay it down and again, just smooth it out. Hopefully I'm not shaking the table because you're not on the table. Smooth it out best you can. This is where, now you can see, because as a scrap, I gotta start over because I got a little wonky seam over here. So let me adjust it over just a little bit and I'm going to just smooth it out. You can actually zoom during the live. Oh, fantastic. Who knew? All right. So you just smooth it out. This is again, this want to make sure that you've got all those wrinkles pressed out. You can definitely press your batting if it came out of the package with one of those huge fold lines. You just want to be careful because sometimes it depends on whether it's cotton or polyester batting. You know, polyester and irons don't really mix. So you just want to be careful with that. Sometimes maybe using a pressing cloth, but you want to make sure that you get any wonky fold seams out of your batting as well. So I have smushed it and laid it out. I'm pretty happy with it. And this is what I'm going to take my rotary cutter. And so, like I said, up here, I've got anywhere from a 1/2 inch to a 1 inch extra overhang on the top. And I'm going to do it the same. Now, obviously, that's a little tricky if you don't have a 8-foot long tabletop, but it's okay. You can cut it extra and then trim as you go if your surface that you're cutting on is just 1 mat wide. You just fold it in half, cut it, and then smooth it out, right? Or you can definitely do this pinning part, not the cutting. Don't cut on your dining room table. I didn't tell you to do that, but you could use scissors. Do that. So if you feel like your surface, you're not getting the right surface and you want to smooth it out, go ahead and take this over to your kitchen table, your dining room table, your island, your floor. I used to do them on my floor in my old house because that was the only biggest surface I had. Laying on the floor, crawling on the floor. Take your scissors, obviously, then, and then you're going to trim your length. So you don't want to lose that smoothness. Okay, so as I show you, so you can see, hopefully, that, yeah, I got a little extra because this was a scrappy, wonky thing, right? But you can see on the left and the right, it's about a 1 inch overhang. And so I'm going to be very careful and keep this. The good thing about batting is it kind of is a sticky, that's the things that are on those Lori Holt project boards is batting. It's kind of like a felt, it's a sticky thing. So it wants to hold your quilt top in place for you, which is helpful. So I'm gonna fold this in half and lay it to the side, and that's perfect. So the next thing, so now after we've prepped our back, right? So we've got our back, we want right side down because we're making our sandwich. We don't want right side up because then when we sew them together, you won't see that. So we're going to put our right side down. And again, so this is 18 inches wide and way longer than we need, which is perfect, right? We'll have extra. Everybody loves scraps. You could use that for the inside of that pinwheel block you're going to use. And then what you're going to do is you're going to lay this down. This is also, make sure this is nice and pressed. I see a little bit of a seam right here, but we're going to move on. I probably would have pressed that out. This is the back, so we get a little bit of grace. Nobody's going to flip over your TableRunner. That's not the pretty part anyway. But you can see, that's the great thing about a TableRunner. I can do it all in one hand. I'm not trying to wrangle the quilt. It's a great baby starter project. So all you're going to do is put this down right on your backing. And again, now we're smoothing, right? And so you can see, let me go ahead and smooth this out before I pick it up. Kind of make that sticky glue, there's no glue. Make the stickiness of the batting kind of hold on to the back now. And that's the great thing about the batting, helps us hold everything together. So I'm gonna pull it up so you can see. So this is what I've got right now. So see, this is what I mean by the top layer is one width. The middle layer is a little wider. And then the bottom layer of the quilt backing, you can see that too. So you wanna be able to see all three layers to make sure that there's nothing hidden, that you're not losing it, that your quilt is big enough. That's why when you send things off to long armors, they want like 4 to 6 inches on the left and the right, bigger than your quilt, or actually all around the perimeter of your quilt. It's a little excessive. I get it. But for the TableRunner, 1 to 2 inches is plenty. You just need to be able to see it, make sure that you're not losing everything, that everything is there. Okay, and so this is an area, this is where personal preference is going to come into effect. So right now, we have a couple different options on, now you saw it does stick together. I was able to hold it up, nothing's moving, but it's not holding enough for once I get it on the sewing machine and I start to finagle the quilt topping, the stitching we're gonna put on the top. Once I do that, it doesn't hold that good. So you have a couple different options. One is a spray based. So it's a temporary, and of course I didn't bring it. It's in the back room. I'd be gone for I don't know how long, but it's a spray based adhesive. So it's a basting spray. It's kind of like a glue spray, temporary glue spray. Not my favorite. Lots of people use it. It works great. It actually holds them together. It doesn't hold them together for long periods of time, meaning in my experience, you need to spray it, stick it, and sew it like that afternoon. Or because it's temporary, right? It's not supposed to. You don't want it to hold forever. Get that glue, sticky, weird, hard. It's supposed to be washable, depends on the brand, depends on what you do. It's not my preferred method. But there's lots of people that live by it, and so I just wanted to give you that option. You could spray, so you'd have to spray 3 layers. You'd spray your bottom layer, stick the batting to it, spray the batting, and stick the top to it, right? So you need to spray all 3 layers, cover the things. I'm great with glue, like hot glue and Eileen's glue, but spray glue, I feel like I get everywhere. It's kind of like spray paint. So not my favorite. But what I do, and this is what I told you I was going to do, so you're gonna learn the Tiger Lily way, is, and sorry for the noise, is safety pins. Now, of course, they're a high jumbled mess, and that's the nature of the beast. So I use the giant ones, and of course you can't see, but it's not the small safety pins, it's the big ones, and only because A, I can see them better, and B, they're easier to handle. The small ones work just fine too. So all you're going to do is pin through all 3 layers, and that's it. So I'm not going to pin the whole thing, but I am going to just show you. So you want to pin. Now there's a couple different rules of thumb. Some people say 4 inches, some people do 6. It's really a comfort level. the more experienced you get, the less pins you can put in. I am going to show you guys, you know, beginner panning. And so I definitely stick with every 4 inches on the diagonal and the length. And let me just put a couple pins in, and then I will pick it up and show you what that means. And the great thing is, because we're doing this block, and these are 3.5, well, they were 3.5 inch squares, right? And so now they're 3 inch squares. So if you wanted to, you could just do every other square. Now that's going to be about 6 inches, but that's probably what I'm going to be doing. And if you do it right on the seam, so the only thing you want to take into consideration is that when we are going to be quilting the top stitching, is that we're going to go slow around those heavy points where we're 8 fabrics are coming together. That's a bulky seam. And so we don't want to break needles. We just want to take into consideration when we're stitching, when we get to those areas. But right now we're talking about pinning. So you can see, I'm going to bring it over to you. And you can see, so that's how much extra I have, and I'll just cut that off. Let me come around here and show you. So you can see, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be putting pins. You want to go right to the edge. I probably should have pinned up there. But, you know, every other block, in and out, that's what I was doing. But more pins is plenty. But now it's not going to move. So now it's not going to move when we're top quilt stitching. So that is what you need to do for your TableRunner, the whole thing. Hopefully that makes sense. And so we're going to be pinning the whole thing. Now, like I said, I'm not going to do that because I've got 2 different ways. I made 2 different samples that we're going to work together so I can show you the 2 different options of top quilting. So you're going to pin it all the way down. Cut off your extra at the end, and now you've got your quilt sandwich runner ready to go on the machine. Okay, but we're not going to actually do that one today because I'm not going to quilt it. So what I did is I prepared 2 quilt sandwiches using just, I've talked about this on my channel before. Back in this back room, I have this pretty little dresser. It's Lily's baby dresser from her room. And it's where my orphan quilt blocks go to live until they find a new life. And so, for example, I went in that drawer this morning and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna have them watch me pin for however long it takes me to do that. And because I wanted to show you 2 different methods, I wanted to have samples to show you. I'm not gonna do 2 different methods on my Patreon because I want to do 1 on there. So I decided the best way to show you was to make 2 sample quilt sandwiches, and we're going to do 2 different methods. Now, so this is just a random quilt block. It's kind of like a runner, but shorter. Just, you know, like I said, an orphan quilt block. It'll probably end up being a project bag at some point, but because I am going to, you know, it's going to be finished on the inside because it's a full quilt sandwich. It's the top, the middle, and the back, right? And then I pinned it just like I showed it to you. And then I did the same with this one. I know they're 2 different sizes, no rhyme or reason, but I've got 2 different sample sandwiches to show you the 2 different methods of quilting. So I'm excited about that. All right, so now let's talk quilting. So give me a minute. Actually, let me, ooh. All right, so I do want to show you how to sew your binding real quick when we get to the sewing machine. Now, this is going to be the TV magic. We'll see how my island on wheels works, right? I think it's gonna work. It might not. We shall see. Ooh. Okay, maybe. Let's see. All right. So not only is it okay. All right. Oh, so close. Okay. Yay, close enough, right, friends? Okay. I know. We're going to do better. If I had a film crew, if I was Kimberly Jolly in Fat Quarter Shop, I would have 27 people here helping me. and 3 cameras and all the things, but we're gonna make do and hopefully it's gonna work. Okay, so I want to show you, I've got my Juki 2010 turned on. I've got my foot pedal. Let's get it done here. Hopefully everything's in the shot. You don't need to see me anyway. We're good. Okay, so before we go to quilting, let's talk about the binding. Now, I've shown you binding on a couple different project bag tutorials. It's the exact same concept, but I just want to show it to you here. So as I was mentioning, it's a 90-degree corner. And so you're going to do right sides together. And you're going to sew 90 degrees from the left to the right. And let me do it, and then I'll bring it up and show it to you. So this is what I mean by, so I had it on the machine, and from the top left to the bottom right, okay? And then, so that's what I'm going to sew. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me show you one more time. From right sides together, right? From the top left to the bottom right. That's my straight line. I know I should have put a different color thread in there. Darn it. So that way you all can see it. But promise me, there's a thread right here, and I'm going to cut it off, and then you can see where so that's where my seam is. And then when I open it up, it's like that. And so that's how you're going to distribute the bulk. Remember, if we just stitch together on a straight line, all that binding bulk will be in one central area, and that's a lot of bulk. But this way, if it's on the angle, the bulk is distributed over this, 2.5 inches, 2.25 inches is the binding width. It's distributed evenly, so it's not so bulky in one area of the binding. So hopefully that makes sense. So now the next step, should have set up my iron, shouldn't I? To prepare your binding for next week, is you're going to want to sew all the strips together, just like that. So now I have a long strip with this diagonal seam. I will link the project bag tutorial where I actually do this, and I've got the camera pointed down and you can actually see a little bit better. I know in one of my project bag tutorials, I give a pretty good binding making / assembly. Now we're going to put the binding on next week, but I'm showing you what you need to do this week to prepare for next week, right? So what you need to do after you sew everything, all your strips together, okay? Then you're going to take it over to your iron and press it in half, right sides out, because that's what we're going to sew together. So right sides out, sew it in half, and that's preparing your binding. So we'll need that for next week. Okay, but let's talk about quilting, shall we? So let me show you. I know I showed you guys during one of the talk about what we're going to be doing videos. I told you quilting. So I brought this one over. This one's a great sample because you can see it. So you can see this quilt stitching. This is white thread on red fabric, right? So this is just a free motion, meandering stitch, kind of, I'm not gonna say wonky, but this is my preferred, just get her done. Now, when you send it off to a long armor, so there's a couple things with quilting. Quilting could look like this, random, just swirlicues. When you get really good with random, you're gonna do you can do like bubbles or hearts or leaves. It all comes with practice. Or a lot of the big, huge quilting machines. Now, when you send them off to a long armor, they're going to have motifs, patterns, fans, or Christmas trees, or hearts, like complicated hearts, all kinds of, and they also do fussy quilting. So I know that Tula Pink is a big fussy quilting. She sends it to her long armor, Angela somebody, but she does fussy long arming, meaning like the center motif is going to have one thing, and then the outer motif is going to have another thing. All that long arm quilt, top stitch quilting is like a whole nother art form. And it's beautiful, beautiful, very expensive. Now, so there's a couple different ways. You can go to a long armor and you can send your stuff away, and they will do like pick a full coverage pattern, the fans, the squirrels, the scrolls, the whatever. And then there's nothing fussy cutting about it. They kind of just put it up, hook it to a computer. The computer does it all. And then it rolls it and spits it and it's done. Beautiful. This, I'm going to show you two methods that you are doing. You are driving. There's no computer. It is your two hands that are driving the quilt stitching on this. And that is how I do all my runners, all my pillows, my project bags, my runners, anything that's small-ish. You know, this is I have a nice deep throat on my machine. That's the thing is, as long as your bulk doesn't get too big in the throat of your machine, you can go as big as you want. In the olden days when I first started quilting, I was quilting at least a queen size quilt. Woo! A queen size quilt on my home machine. And it's just a matter of managing the bulk because you're rolling it up in this throat and kind of wiggling it out. Now, I do have a long arm. It's actually at my mama's house. It didn't make it to Mount Vernon yet. But it's not a computer one. I'm still the driver, but it's a machine now that I can drive in bulk. And so that's how I would do this one. But this stitch is easy to do on your machine. Now we've talked about machines, and obviously everybody's machines are different. I'm going to show you the attachments that come with mine. Now, you may not have anything but the foot that comes with it, and that should work just fine. The key with quilting is there's two different methods. We're going to do the free motion. I'm going to show you the free motion, the kind of swirly whirly ones. Or if you do not have a couple of these features to be able to do the swirly whirly one, I'm going to show you what you can do. Everybody's machine can do one thing. Okay, so first we're going to start off. Oh, my thread got all disheveled coming over here from the sewing machine. The first thing we're going to do is the swirly whirly, the free motion, the meandering. There are a couple things, like I said, that your machine needs to be able to do this part. One is the feed dogs have to go down. What does that mean? Right? Are you like, what is she talking about? Okay, so your feed dogs, when you're sewing, there's your foot at the top, and then down below, way down here, there's like this bumpy metal teethy looking thing. It's about an inch and a quarter long. It's metal teeth, right? And so when you're sewing, the foot and the feet on the bottom are feeding the fabric through. And that's how your fabric moves. From the front to the back. And obviously your stitch length is determined by how fast the feed dogs are moving, right? That's how. Anyway, we're not going to get into the engineering of the sewing machine, but that's just the simple layman's term of the feed dogs. But your feed dogs either don't adjust and they are what they are, or they go down. So you will, if you know how to do this, awesome. If you don't, pull out your owner's manual, go to the trusty Google, figure out if there's a dial, a flip, a switch, a button, some way for you to disengage the feed dogs. Meaning now your feed dogs aren't going to be helping the fabric go through because our hands are going to be the ones moving the fabric, not the feed dogs. So on the Juki 2010 that I have, it's real easy. They have it. Can you see it? Oh, good. There's a dial right here, and you can see it's a picture. They make it real easy. Hopefully your machine's just as easy, but putting the feed dogs, that's it. And now my feed dogs are down. They sunk down into the throat plate, down past the plate. And so now smooth, I can't feel them. The teeth are gone. There's nothing there. And that's how you know your feed dogs are not engaged anymore. So hopefully you can find your feed dog disabler button doodad. Now let me go over here, grab a cup of coffee, grab a sip. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any questions yet because I feel like I'm going over a lot of material in one swoop, and now you get the view of my window. Sorry, friends. So that's step one of doing the meander and stitch, is to be able to disengage your feed dogs. Step two, Now, this is not a deal breaker. You might be able to do it without this foot change of foot, but let me show you, because maybe it came with it and you're like, I don't know what that is. It looks like this. It's a stippling foot. It's just a round circle and the needle goes right through the middle. And it's got a nice spring, and this is what you're going to use for free motion quilting. So you're going to change your foot. Now, some machines are going to come with that. Some machines are not. It all just depends on what you're working with. Chances are, now what I do recommend before you quilt your pretty table runner that you worked for 3 weeks on, right? Make a couple test quilt sandwiches with your extra, that extra fabric at the binding, your pinwheel. If you feel, make a couple scrappy quilt blocks, grab something, or just use pure scraps. But make yourself a couple test sandwiches so that you're going to work out all your free motion quilting kinks on your testers before you get into your table runner, because it would just be heartbreaking if you did all this work for 3 weeks and then you got to the quilting. It's a learning curve. There is some learning. The free motion takes time. I'm gonna be honest. I might make it look a little easy, and I might not. I'm not saying I don't do this very often anymore. A, because I have a long arm that it's a lot easier to drive the long armor, and B, I'm making keepers, not quilts right now. So I might not make it look easy, but I'll make it easier for sure. If it's your first time will not look like this. I'll just be honest with you. My first time did not look like this. I wish I had my first quilt so I could show you how ugly my meandering stitches were. There was like lines and jaggeds and straight edge. I mean, it is not, and this one's not perfect, but so give yourself a lot of grace, because mine was ugly for a long time. So, but I'm going to show you how to do it. I strongly suggest that you make some test quilt sandwiches, spend some time quilting. I'm going to be doing some bag tutorials later on in April. So if you wanted to make yourself a couple just sandwiches, and they don't have to be pretty, right? It's yours. You're going to put, your stitching notions, your knitting, whatever you want, cords in it, Legos, crayons, whatever. We'll add a couple zippers, and it's a great little grab and go bag just to hold all the doodads. And your stitching doesn't have to look good for that, right? It's just holding a box of crayons to take to the restaurant for coloring or whatever. So if you want to make yourself a couple good sizes, might be perfect to make some bags with us next month. Okay. So, but in the meantime, let me show you what we're going to do. So I've got my machine set. My machine, the feed dogs are down. I've put my new foot on, and this is it. So I'm going to do it, and it's going to be hard. I'm trying to think if I did this on any videos that I could zoom in and show you. That's the only challenge with doing a live, is that I can't zoom in and cut and edit and do all the things and show you right here what I'm doing. But I'm going to do it, and you're going to watch my hands, hopefully, and then I'm going to pick it up and show you to you what I did. So the first thing you want to do, I don't have my knee lever, so I have to use this old-fashioned bar, is you want to make sure. Okay, so a couple things to take into consideration when you are free motion quilting, and I'm going to do a couple inches, so talk amongst yourself while I'm doing it, is that you want to pay attention, go slow. This is not a race. Okay, so I don't want to get too advanced for you. When you have it on a long arm, your stitches are going to be regulated, right? What the heck am I talking about, right? Okay, so we've talked about stitch length, right? So when you're sewing a straight line on your sewing machine and you set your stitch length to 2.5, that's my go-to on 90% of quilt block assembly is 2.5. That's how far away the stitches are, and the teeth are moving it, so everything is standardized. There is no things. The stitch length is determined by the speed at which you move. meaning if you go slow, your stitches are going to be really, really, really close together. If you go really fast, your stitches are going to have a really long tail. I'm just going to do some stitches and maybe I'll be able to show you what I'm talking about. The only thing you do want to take into consideration is don't run over a safety pin. Watch out for the roadblocks. Your needle will 100% break. I did not bring needles over, so cross your fingers. I don't break any needles, but I break needles all the time when I'm doing this. So did you hear my machine? I was pushing harder. I was telling it to go faster. Now that's going to depend on your machine. All right, let's see. Hold on, let me clip my threads, bring it up. I might go change my thread so you can actually see something, because that seems like it might be a little bit more beneficial for you. I don't know if you're going to be able to see. I'm going to change my thread color. So can you see, like right here in the light? Of course, I picked a light pink. Okay, right here in the green. See those long tails? That's a long stitch length. That's when I was going slow. The machine was stitching slow and I was going slow. So that is going to be a long stitch. And so then when I sped up, and you could hear the speed up, see how close my stitches are together right here? So much different than this green, right? So that is, maybe it's easier to see on the back. You can see the varying stitch length and you can see the wonky shapes, right? That's okay. So that's what takes practice, is figuring out your speed, the perfect combination between your speed and your presser foot speed. My machine has a dial like a turtle to snail. It's adorable. Rabbit to turtle. Rabbit to turtle little speed gauge. So if I'm, smashing the pedal, depending on how fast it goes, I don't think that's a common dial, but it just matters on how smashy you are with your foot pedal. So hopefully, that's all you're going to do, is you're just going to want to go slow, find the right speed, find the right combination of how fast can you hear the machine? Sometimes I can hear it because, kind of weird. But, once you get into the groove of it, then you got to get into the groove of it. You got to become one with your machine. The stitch, the speed at which you're moving your fabric, the speed, how heavy you're pushing your pedal, and then you're just moving it. Now they do sell, I don't have them. I used to use them. I don't anymore. They make these gripper gloves. It's kind of like those little baby socks that have the little plasticky gripper things on their feet, but it's on your hands. So that way when you're moving, because you are the one driving the fabric. Remember we talked about it. The fabric would not move. If you just sat here and pressed the foot, put it down, it would just sit here. The fabric would not move. Your hands are the ones moving the fabric and drawing the pattern. Now, couple things. If you feel comfortable just doing this wonky kind of bubble in and out figure 8 situation, great. If that's like, oh my gosh, too much, a lot of people will get those friction, those heat pens, and they'll draw a pattern, whether an easy pattern. Don't get crazy, right? But draw a little lines. So it's easier and then you're just tracing your lines. Okay. So it's something to think about, whether you want to grab one of those pens and just do like little swirlies, little bubbles on the inside, go ahead and Google free motion quilting patterns. Easy free motion quilting patterns, easy. It's not a template. It's just kind of coming up with the shape, a meandering stitch. All we're doing right now is solidifying the connection between the top, the middle, and the back. We're quilting it together. So if it was a big old blanket, 3 layers wouldn't be coming apart together, right? But that's how you do the meandering stitch. I did see a couple things come over. Let me see if you have any questions. Yes, start small. Do you take the pins out? Do you do it as you're in the stitching area? Okay, great question. So personally, I don't stop when I am quilting, I quilt around. So as you can see, there's negative space, right? Maybe it's easier to see. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so there's negative space, right? And that negative space is where the pins are. And that's okay. You're gonna naturally have negative space anyway. So that's how I do it, is I just kind of go around the pins. It gives me a pattern of negative space. Now, if you go the route of drawing a pattern on, chances are you're going to go right through the pins. And so you will have to stop. Make sure when you stop, needles down. Otherwise, I struggle with the beginner versus teaching you guys. Do you know these things? Like, I hate to be like, and you're over there, you're like, duh, Carrie, we know that. So hopefully that's not the situation. But when you stop, my needle came unthreaded. When you stop and you want to take a break, you want to step away, you want to realign yourself, have a drink of coffee, whatever you want to do. When you stop, when you're free motion quilting, you want to make sure you stop and the needle is down. So that way, because if you lifted your needle up, your fabric's going to move and you're going to have to worry about lining up right where you stopped. So you always stop with your needle down. So you can stop at any time as long as your needle's down and take the pins out. If you want to take the pins out, you just don't want to take the pins out too far ahead of time, because the pins are holding the fabrics together, right? That's the whole point of the pins, is they're there to keep everything aligned and straight. And you don't want, if you end up taking them out too early, you could get a little bulky thing on the back. You're going to see a bubble, a bump, bulge on the top. It's visually on top, but the back you can't see. And so that's why the pins are there, to help keep all the layers together the way they should be. So let's see. I think we got a couple more questions. That was all the things. You're so cute. Should you start in the middle on the side? Okay, so when you're doing a TableRunner, or when you're doing any kind of anything really, I always start off camera, off row. So I start right here at the edge and then go in. Now, of course, that doesn't work all the time. You're going to inevitably, I didn't even check my bobbin, so we could very well run out of bobbin thread today. You're going to run out of bobbin. Maybe not during this TableRunner top. If you start with a fresh bobbin, you might make it through. But if you're working on a bigger project, you will run out of bobbin thread, and so you're going to have to stop, and then you're going to have to take your noodle up. So the one thing you want to do is, if you do have to change your needle or change your bobbin thread, and obviously if you're changing your bobbin thread, you can't leave your needle down like I just told you to do. So you got to lift your needle up, change your bobbin thread. You're like, but how do I? What you want to make sure you do is that you go back over. So let's, where the heck did I stop? Okay. So you can see right here, maybe, forget the shadows. I totally should have changed my thread. I am so sorry. I can't think of all the things. So you can see right here, this is where I stopped, right? And I cut my thread and brought it over to come show it to you. Now, when I go back, I need to start right here in this area and kind of go over it a couple times. It reinforces, it's kind of like the back stitch of top quilting. You're going to go over those other stitches, so now those won't pull out. And if you go over yourself, your own loop, if you go over your own loop twice, it's like a back stitch, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Now that is free motion quilting. So again, maybe you want to do this one try it out, make a couple smalls. We're gonna make some bags, we'll make some things, little placemats, whatever you want, little play mats, those little stitching mats that people use at retreats, adorable. Okay, so that, but remember, you have to be able to take your feed dogs down, because if your feed dogs were not able to be disengaged, you would be fighting the feed dogs. If you were driving the fabric around and around, but your feed dogs are underneath going, we want to go straight, we want to go straight, we want to go straight. And so you have to be able to hopefully that makes sense. You have to be able to disengage your feed dogs to do that kind of drive with your hands. If you're not driving with your hands, then what you're going to do is a straight stitch top quilting. Okay, hold on. Look at me. Over there is a whole bookcase full of quilts. This is one where I did a straight stitch top quilting. And that's just because the pattern, it made sense to me. It's this funny little, I don't even know. It's like a subway map or something. I don't know. It's such a funny pattern quilt, 15 years ago, I think. But you can see that I just did straight lines, because this is just straight lines. These are all right angles. It's either this way or that way, right? So I decided that this kind of quilting made sense for that. So that's what you're going to do. If you can't disengage your feed dogs, you're going to want to do straight quilting. Now you have a couple different choices. I'm not going to put this one on because this is not something that usually comes with everybody's machine, but I do want to show it to you just in case you have one. You're like, I don't know what this is. So this is a walking foot. This comes with your Juki 2010. It's a walking foot. So remember, when I was telling you about the feed dogs, right? And then this is your normal 1/4 inch. It's not even a 1/4 inch. This is just your standard. This is the foot that's on my machine 99% of the time. Just standard foot. You don't need a 1/4 inch. You don't need a zipper foot for this. Any kind of foot would work. But maybe you have a walking foot. Now, if you have a walking foot, you want to use a walking foot. But if you don't, we'll make do. It'll still work. These are only 3 layers of fabric. But the advantage of a walking foot, sometimes you can get an attachment for your machine for a walking foot, or sometimes it comes with your machine. What is a walking foot? Let me show you. Remember, we were talking about the feed dogs down below, the little metal teeth that are moving the fabric this way, right? And then you've got just your smooth little thing that's just letting the bottom teeth do all the work. Keep on chugging, right? That's what you do most of the time. Now, walking feet is great, and it's designed for big, chunky projects. Now, I should be using this with my keeper, but I don't. I just stick with this, so we can get this done. But it works great with quilting because what does it do? Let me show you. Can you see? See these things right here? Those are metal teeth. I'm trying to see. Oh, yeah. See the metal teeth? That is metal teeth from the top. So what this walking foot will do, now you've got 2 metal feet working together. We're chugging. I think I can. And so now the teeth are grabbing from the bottom, grabbing from the top, and shoving the fabric. Grabbing, shoving. And so they're working together. So it works fantastic for consistent, bulky seams that you just want to move straight. So that is a walking foot. If you have one, check it out. Put it on your machine. It's fantastic. I love it. I definitely use it for like that quilt I just showed you. I would use this, but I'm not going to show you that because that's usually a bell and whistle that not everybody has. So like I said, I even sew my keepers, which if you ever had a keeper, you'd know that it's foam and vinyl and fabric. Oh my, there's lots of layers, and this gets it done. The key is the right needle. I don't know if we talked about needle sizes, the 80s and 90s and 11s and 14s and all the things. So maybe we'll have a separate, I can see we're already approaching the hour line, so I don't want to go into needles. But if you have any questions about needle sizes, you know, when you're quilting, you want to, you It's just 2 thin layers of quilt fabric, right? So the needle, a skinny little needle will do. But right now we're going through 3 layers of batting, 2 fabrics, and then at times when you're going over those hefty seams, there's lots of layers of fabric, right? So you want to just take into consideration if your needle's breaking, if it's not working, maybe your needle size isn't right. But that's a problem for another day. In the meantime, now, of course, I pulled this one. This is the one I was going to do the straight stitch sample on because it made sense, right? Oh, to the live videos. Okay, well, this one makes sense too. It's also a straight line. So all you're going to do for this one, now, so you have a couple different, this is real simple. It's sewing a straight line. I would make my stitch length a little longer. I'm gonna make it a 3.5. I have to turn my, now my feed dogs are not coming back. There they go. Hold on. Let's see if they'll engage back up. Nope. They're not. Well, they're not engaging. Oh, to the troubles. Real life sewing machine problems, right? I don't disengage my feed dogs very often. And now, I think I just disengaged them and they won't re-engage. Well, pickles. All right, friends. Nope. It's supposed to switch right back up and they're supposed to shoot right back up. Oh, this can't go to the sewing machine, doctor. Okay. I'll have to open up the plate, see if I can shove them up. But in the meantime, let me show you what to do. You're just going to straight line stitch. Yeah, I tried the restart. Unfortunately, because this is not a computer, the restart doesn't work. We'll turn it off and let it think about what it's done. We're just going to do straight lines. Now, on our 12-inch block, on our TableRunner, they're not straight lines, right? So you can either decide to go short ways or all the way down. Or you can do both. You could do a nice like crosshatch plaid situation, or you're just gonna go straight down one side. And what you're gonna wanna do, let me grab, keep that. I think you've lost my, there we go. Okay, so what you're gonna wanna do is use this line, this edge as your guideline, right? So maybe you're half an inch off this line, an inch off this line, but use one of these straight lines that already exists as your point of reference, and then just go all the way down. And then maybe you use this one. So if you're 1 inch off here and you're 1 inch off here, the 3-inch block, remember? So then you're going to be centered right in it. And so then if you go straight down the middle, so that's gonna be 1 stitch line every inch. It's a little much. If you wanted to do a 1/2 inch, it doesn't need to be that bulky. You can see on the back, you know, the difference is like, that's a 3-inch. You don't need it to be that tight or that dense of a top stitching. So you could stitch in the ditch, down the line, go straight lines. And this is also another area where you could use those Friction heat pens to just draw yourself straight lines and go straight line this way. You could do a wider, you could just do it on the block lines and then do it on block lines this way. And then the lines could just disappear because they're what we call stitching in the ditch. The ditch is the seam lines that come together. So if you just stitch in the ditch, that'll give you a beautiful cross hatch line and you won't even see, but all your 3 layers will be put together. So that is probably the easiest way to quilt, to top quilt stitch this one. If you're new and the free motion one got scary, your sample block wasn't what you wanted, you don't and you don't want your quilt runner, your table runner, the one you put all the work in, to have any oopsie daisies, then stitch in the ditch. And so you're going to basically sew on 3 lines, right? 1, 2, 3, straight down, all the way down. And then you're gonna just sew lines this way, right down the middle, right down the middle. And so then you'll have a nice plaid little tic-tac-toe board, cross hatch all along the back. You won't see the stitching on the front because it's in the ditch. No lines, no needed. You just follow the lines, and that's the easiest way to do it. So what you're going to do this week is you're going to quilt your runner, right? So first, you got to add the fabric sides, right? Then you got to cut your binding or cut your back, seam it together to make one long back. All right. Then we're going to quilt sandwich it. You got your top, your middle, and your back. Sandwich it all together. Pin it like it's your job. Now, if you've decided on how you're going to do your stitching, pin accordingly. So like if you're going to stitch in the ditch, don't put any pins right there and you can avoid them. Put your pins offset of your, and then you don't have to take them out as you go. And then do your top stitching, whether you decide to do free motion, whether you decide to do straight line stitching, whatever you feel comfortable with. This is your project. This is your design, your custom choice. Then nobody's going to come say anything negative about your table runner. And so you want to get to the point of your table runner being completely cut and ready to go. And then next week, what we're going to do, and we're almost ready. The home stretch is almost here, friends. So we're going to trim, and I'll show you all this. So this is all you need to do. Next week, you're going to come with your pinned removed table sandwich quilted. Okay. And then we're going to take your binding that you've prepped, right? You've done your binding, you've sewn it together, and you've ironed it in half. And we're going to machine sew our binding on. And then I'm going to show you how I sew it on. I'm going to show you my machine binding because that's what I do with my washable ones. My table runners are all machine bound because table runners always have to go in the washing machine. I don't know about you, but you know, we get salsa, guacamole, all the things right there in the middle of the table runner, and only washing machine's going to get it out. You don't want to have to hand wash that. And so I machine do the binding on both sides. So it's easy peasy. So next week's project, next week is going to be easy. The binding will take no time, and then you'll have your table runner to enjoy. So let me come over to my machine. I am so sorry that my little technical difficulties. We're going to see how the week's going to go. All right, friends, I think we're where we're going to be. All right, so yay, Phyllis, you have a walking foot. It's super fun. You should definitely give that a whirl as you go. Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. All right, so hopefully, this is our longest one yet, I think, friends. I knew that going in. I was like, oh, this is a lot. And then the things and all the stuff. Okay, so as always, message me. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below if you're watching this after, and I will come back. I know this week is a little tricky. Maybe I'll do a couple videos, just kind of dialing in, showing you guys, throw them up on an Instagram reel, little quickie, just to show you hey, hopefully, cross your fingers for me, please, that I can get the daggone feed dogs re-engaged on my machine. Otherwise, I'm pulling out my vintage Pink Atlas, and she's going to help me make keepers this week. Oh, I know. I hope it gets well, too. Thank you. So let me know if you have any questions, but hopefully we are going to work together, get this week done. It is so close. I'm having so much fun doing these with you guys. I hope you're enjoying them. Let's start thinking about what we want to make next, shall we, friends? All right. Does the foot down lever go to the left? Does the foot down lever go to the left? Huh. I'm not quite sure I know what the foot down lever to the left means. That might be a specific thing to your machine. So, I don't know. Okay, friends. Maybe you were trying to help me fix my machine. I don't know. Otherwise, I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. All right, friends, that is all we have for you today. As always, tag me on Instagram if you're playing along. And otherwise, I will see you on FlossTube Friday. Lots of stitching, lots of knitting updates coming along. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.